Right, so thank you very much. We're here to talk about alternative routes into the industry. We've already heard today about the skills gap, etc. You know, how many qualified people are going to be missing by 2019. This talk is aimed at actually looking at things from a different perspective. Before we get there, I just want to give a disclaimer. So the work you're going to see between myself and Lee is all our own work, our own ideas, etc. It does not represent anything of our employer per se. Which is great, because if there's anything that goes wrong in this or anything you disagree with, it's entirely Lee's fault.
Always is.
And this is why you employ people. So, first of all, I want to give you a little case study. I want to introduce you to Jelena Milosevic. So I met Jelena at B-Sides London earlier this year. She applied to go onto the rookie track. We all know what the rookie track is. She was paired with me as the experienced speaker. This was the first public speaking gig that she had done, and certainly the first thing she presented on information security. She did a very good job. She put across the points she wanted to about education awareness in the healthcare sector. And as you can see, her Twitter feed is awash with her attending talks and giving talks, etc. A proper information security professional, you might say. Since June in B-Sides, she's presented at all of these talks. These are a cut and paste from what she gave me. The last two are the ones that she's going to be doing in November and December. So that's quite a few talks here. So I just want to, a quick show of hands here. Who here has done this many talks since June? There's probably a couple of you in here who've done that, but who here has done this many talks since June? Wow. Okay. So it gives you an idea of, the commitment she's applied and what she's trying to do here. She also got picked up by the Register. Now this is interesting here because I've blanked out a couple of key words on this. So not only has she spoken at a number of very high profile and respected conferences, she's been quoted in the Register. The Register picks up on some top level stories and the important stories, right? I think we'll agree on that. So can you guess what the two missing words are? So she's a pediatric nurse. Infosec is not her job, is not her career. Her full-time job is as a pediatric nurse, and yet she's able to present at all those conferences. She gets quoted by the Register, and the headline says it all. When a pediatric nurse tells you got to fix something, you really got to stand up and listen. So this is somebody who's showing some unique values within our industry. So let's see, what's behind the doors on some of these values. So the first one, of course, is that she cares. That's kind of a given. She's a nurse. She's an emotional giver, as it were. But she also cares enough about information security and the implications it can have on healthcare. She cares enough to not only push that agenda within her day job, but to actually reach out to the community and engage with the information security on our terms, not hers, but on our terms. She attended B-Sides London. That was the first conference she attended. She subsequently attended others. And her public speaking, etc., has just improved every single time. She's shown real energy. Anybody who knows, who's been on the road and done a number of talks, etc., knows actually quite how exhausting it is to attend 2 or 3 conferences in a month, let alone 10 or 11 in 4 or 5 months, plus doing their day job. So she's shown real energy and in putting this important message across. She's definitely stepped outside of her comfort zone. Ask her something about pediatric medicine, not a problem at all. Ask her about infosec, she's actually pushing her boundaries. She's pushing herself outside of her comfort zone, but cares enough and has enough energy to do so. And that leads on to the next one. She's passionate. She's absolutely passionate about this. She's so passionate that she's spending every waking hour outside of her day job to do this. And these are very important values that we need to consider. Now, while you're thinking about that, I'm going to hand over to my learned colleague, Mr. Munson, who can tell you about his story.
Thank you, Tom. Hello, IRISSCON. My name is Lee Munson, and 10 years ago, my life was very, very different to how it is now. And I've skipped forward some slides. You got that?
Yeah, press the back one. Yeah.
Due to circumstances beyond my control, I found myself working in the retail industry. And let me tell you, it sucked. The hours were long, the hours were unsociable, the pay was absolutely rubbish, and there was no recognition, ever. Are you listening to it? That's good.
Some things don't change.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what the worst part was? It was the fact that I didn't need to think to do my job. I could literally leave my brain at the door and collect it again when I finished. And I really hated that. So, to keep my mind active, I started learning about information security, a topic that interested me. I found a lot of content online, and it was well written, but it was written by very intelligent people for other very intelligent people. So I took it upon myself to start a little blog. And there I wrote about the things I was learning, but in a way my friends and family could understand. A few years later, imagine my surprise when I checked my visitor logs and found out it wasn't just my friends and family that were reading my blog. There was about 8,000 other people every day from all around the world. I thought that was pretty cool. In fact, I thought that was so cool, I started looking for other ways to learn. I joined this new social networking thingy called Twitter. And through that, I found a number of good friends. And that led me to security conferences, much like the one you're at today. And let me tell you, for me, as a chronic introvert, that was a big deal. I got super nervous sitting down there. So spare a thought for how I feel standing up here today. And some of those cool people I met started suggesting I might like a career in the industry. Sounds cool to me. So a few people asked me for a copy of my CV. And as you can see here, the response I got wasn't all that. To be fair though, I can't blame them. After all, I didn't have the degree, I didn't have the certifications, and I didn't even have any experience. I had nothing to offer. For many people, that would be a cue to give up. But I carried on for about 3 years because I enjoyed what I was doing. But then one day I woke up and I thought, you know what? I'm putting more time into my hobby than I am my job, and it's getting me nowhere. So I wrote a short post on my blog. I said thank you to a few people who'd been good to me. I hit the publish button. I tweeted about it, and I turned my computer off. I was done with the information security industry because that industry was done with me. Or so I thought. 2 minutes later, my phone went berserk. Phone calls, emails, direct messages, text messages, people trying to persuade me to reconsider. People like Rick Ferguson, Graham Cluley, Neera Jones, Raj Samani, and over the course of a week, 6,500 other people. Fortunately for me, one of them, a very handsome and modest Irishman, offered me a role as social media manager for BH Consulting. That was just the start I needed. Next up, Sophos approached me. Would I like to write for the Naked Security blog? Hell yeah. Now I'm earning more money part-time doing something I love than I was working full-time in a job I hated. If that was the end of my story, I'd have been quite happy there. But of course, it wasn't. In 2015, at the Security Blogger Awards, somehow, and don't ask me how, I stole a couple of awards away from Mr. Thom Langford.
It was a fix.
It was well worth that cash I gave you, wasn't it, Brian? Fortunately for me, Thom wasn't half as disappointed as he appears in this picture. In fact, quite the opposite. A few months later, he offered me a job. Now, it wasn't quite the role I was hoping for, but I figure as long as none of you ask too many questions, I can pass myself off as an information security professional. And that sounds jolly good to me. And so, despite the fact that I don't have the right pieces of paper, I have a very rewarding career that I absolutely love. Of course, some of that's down to me. The fact that I love what I do. I'm passionate about it. And I never know when I'm beaten. But a lot of it is down to people like Thom and Brian, who could see past that lack of qualifications and the lack of certifications, and saw that there was something about me and the type of person I was. You know, I could learn, I could be moulded, I could be taught. That's not to say that qualifications and certifications are entirely useless, though. In fact, I'm proud to say that I am now certified. I'm a certified T-boy. How cool is that? Every morning, when Thom comes into the office, I can make him a cup of Earl Grey that complies with all the controls in Annex A of the standard. And even that is not the end of my story. In fact, it's just the beginning. With Thom's continuing support, there'll be another certification this year, the CISP, and another secret opportunity that I can't talk about yet may give me the opportunity to give something back to a community that has been so good to me. And for that, I thank all of you here. Thom.
It wasn't that good. So let's have a look again at those values, the values that I called out for Yelena, but actually match for Lee as well. I'm not going to go through them all. The same comments are there, but there's also other aspects as well that we can call out on here. So, for instance, Lee came to these events. He forced himself to these events and was able to network with people like yourselves and actually communicate and actually talk about what it was that he did. And we could see the man behind the mask as well. He was extremely patient. As he said, it took a number of years. I mean, and the patience at one point ran out, but was then subsequently renewed, I'm pleased to say. But patience is important. You can't just break into something, on a day's notice or whatever. You have to provide something yourself as well. He educated himself from somebody without an infosec background to somebody who has 250,000 hits a month on an infosec website. That's pretty good going. So, actually going out and hitting the books, hitting the YouTube videos, even though you're not being paid to, even though there's actually nothing promised at the end of the light, is absolutely vital. Finally, and I'm not going to say it, but finally, he was committed. The reason I say that is the bacon and eggs on your plate this morning, the hen was involved, the pig was committed. Lee was absolutely committed in what he wanted to do here. You come up with a visual metaphor for committed. It worked at 2 o'clock last night. But he's absolutely committed to what he wanted to do. He continued to do it. And actually, as he said, if his career in InfoSec started and ended blogging for other companies, Sophos, etc., that would have been great. But actually, that ongoing commitment meant more and meant more things happening. So the big deal here is, as an employer, and I'm sure there's many employers in this room. I can see a few of you because you've got ties and jackets on. But as an employer, so what? Well, I would suggest that actually this is a really important message. So anybody in this room who's an employer who's actually looking to hire now, can you put your hands up, please? In fact, no, can you stand up? Come on. Or if your company is hiring. I've spoken to at least 2 or 3 people who are doing this. So that's 2. I know Brian's hiring at the back. Someone here who's not standing up. So you've got 4, there's 4 people here. So there's probably a few more because I know audiences are traditionally shy. So actually, this is a great place to look for people, absolutely. And this is, unfortunately, not the place that most employers go to when they look to hire new talent. Because all they do is complain about this. They talk about how big the skills gap is and how we can't get skilled people and how all they can do is to get very expensive contractors who are going to bridge that gap, etc. When actually I strongly believe that gap is far, far smaller than it actually is. And that's because they're purely looking to find round pegs to plug into precisely round holes. They're not looking at the passionate people, at the people who might not have had their into InfoSec through traditional means. We had that example just earlier with Paper Ghost, talking about his degree in fine art and him drawing pictures and stuff until he actually discovered hacking. And now here he is, earning money and talking about, telling really good stories about his exploits on the, against the criminals on the internet. So there are many people out here, and probably here today and in this room and out there, even next door, who don't have the qualifications, who don't necessarily have the experience. And yet, most employers don't even look at them. They look for 5 years and a CISP, or a CEH and 10 years, or whatever. And yet, what we should be thinking of is more what Simon here says. Don't necessarily hire skilled people. That doesn't do much. All that does is fill the gap now. Hire motivated people and then inspire them. So I can tell you that at least 4, 5 people on my team have come from non-security backgrounds, but they've had the values. They've had those characteristics that actually make them really good at their job. I was talking to somebody last night in the bar who said that one of his best investigators has a PhD in microbiology. He could probably have had a PhD in pretty much any subject, but he is his most talented forensic investigator. That's not a traditional entrance. So we need to open our minds far, far more to the people who can make the biggest difference to our organisations and to our industry, and look past the fact that qualifications and experience are all that we're looking for. What I'm not doing is asking for employers to take a chance. Many people might think, if I do that and it goes wrong, what happens, etc. Don't take a chance. Absolutely not. Focus on giving an opportunity rather than taking a chance. Give people the opportunity to do good work. If they have popped up on your radar because of the type of work that they're doing, if they've popped up on your radar because they're passionate about what they do and they're motivated and they're doing it anyway, then you should absolutely be giving them that opportunity, and you will not be taking a chance at all. Bottom line is, I can't teach values. I can't teach motivation and characteristics. I can teach technical skills. That's the easiest part of being an employer. And I think the key part here is, and this is a quote that's been attributed to a number of people, I've traced it back to this guy, but certainly as employers or anybody who has a number of years in the industry, is, when you are successful, no matter at what point, always give the people who do not have the opportunity that you had or do not have the skills that you have, give them that opportunity. Give back. Talk at conferences. Even help host conferences. If your hobby is taking photos, take photos at a conference. Contribute to the community and engage with that community. And you will start to find the people who will really change the industry, not the ones who are just round pegs for round holes in the industry.
And so, if you're trying to find your first position in the information security industry, find what it is you love. If you love something, you'll do well at it. As Thom just said, come to events like this. Engage with people. Don't just say hello and have a coffee. Find out about people. Get to know them. Commit to what you want to do. That's how I got to where I am today. If you know something about a particular topic, share your knowledge. That's how we all grow. And probably most of all, get out there and network like a mother redacted. Demonstrate your passion for what you do. Also, make sure everyone knows your values just by the way you act. And do not be afraid to share your opinions on anything. They're all valuable.
And again, it might have been the point I just made, but values and opinions are things we cannot teach. But the technology skills are going to naturally follow. And that's an important thing we should always consider. It's not the other way round. And last of all, as employers, or even as people who come to these conferences, start to look outside of your normal channels when you're trying to employ. Be a part of the communities. Try and get your companies to sponsor events like this so they can get their HR and recruiters here maybe. These are people that actually, in ordinary terms, just go out to LinkedIn or just go out to certain agencies with a set of requirements. InfoSec is way beyond that. We have a very, very varied base of people. As such, it's quite a young industry. So therefore, there should be no barrier for entry into this industry whatsoever. Myself and Lee are going to be available for the rest of the day. We're also available on these internet residencies. But finally, I'd just like to say, it's thank you from me.
And it's thank you from him.
Any questions before we break for lunch?
We have 3 minutes, so make them quick.
I'm probably as socially awkward as it can get.
Let me repeat the question.
Go on.
So the question was, how do we actually find these people when potentially they're socially awkward, not necessarily the most outgoing of people?
Yeah, as I was saying, I'm probably one of the most socially awkward people out there. And I hate that. So I just had to push past it. If you're not good at something, you can either run away and hide, or you can just keep trying and trying until you overcome it. To some point, I'm still shy, but I have no problem going up to somebody, saying hello, introducing myself, and having a quick chat, because the worst thing that can happen is they walk away and don't speak back to you.
And a couple of other things. You will find people at these places that share your values, are probably similarly minded to you. That's your in, that's your start. Don't expect that you're going to suddenly be able to network with the CISO of something, MI5 or whatever, the very next day. You will start to engage slowly and gradually. But social media is a great way of starting that. For me, it's Twitter. I don't know what you kids use today. But is it Kick, or is that too old now? I don't know.
That's for someone else.
That's for someone else, okay. But social media is a great way. It actually removes a lot of those barriers. And there's people here today that I've met on social media as a result of actually them engaging me, outside of conferences and on those social media platforms. So actually, there's ways and means to do it. But yeah, it's a big challenge. It's very difficult. But you know what? What else are you going to do? Anything else? Yes?
Just a question for Lee. Do you find any of your skills from retail actually transferred over quite well in your current work at all?
I'm going to repeat the question again. Do any of the skills from retail transfer to InfoSec?
I can't think of any. If your children are thinking of going into retail, tell them not to.
I think the skill of taking a cigarette break quite frequently was something you pulled over.
I've held on to that one, yes.
So, one more?
How would your approach change based on the age group of people you're trying to hire? Would your approach change if you're looking for people maybe in their 30s or 40s as compared to people in their 20s or 18? But is there any way that you can manage it so you have different approaches to people?
I think the question was, how do you approach the change aspect with people of different ages? The age doesn't matter. I mean, look how old Lee is, and I employed him.
Old enough to be his son.
Age per se has no impact whatsoever. It's again the values, the characteristics, the passion, etc. that's important. The only differences are differences in people. So, for instance, some people who've had potentially a strong background in IT, not even necessarily in IT security or even in, architecture or whatever, I find that sometimes they can pick up certain concepts quicker than other people. But that's not an age thing. That's purely a previous experience. So somebody who comes in with an art degree may well require a little bit more help on some of the more technical aspects. However, I can also use their existing skill set in things like creating graphics for awareness campaigns and looking at things in a far more aesthetic manner than I can with my clunky, boxes and words on PowerPoint. So, you should focus very much on the individual's background and also where they want to go and what they want to do. I say turn the requirements around. I was looking for an infosec person who could write, but actually what I wanted to find was somebody who could write about infosec, who wanted to get into infosec. So in Lee's particular case, I searched for the first person, didn't exist at all. You have to sometimes turn these requirements on their head. What are you truly looking for? Any other questions? Marvellous. Time for lunch. Thank you.